When the police officer tore up the license of African-American Commissioner James Wilson, he didn't realize that this would mark the beginning of the end for the entire system. James's response to the humiliation would overturn everything he knew about justice. Patrol Officer Jack Stevens, known for his temper, was cruising the streets of Hillsborough. His attention was drawn to a black man on a motorcycle, stopped at an intersection. The shiny new Harley-Davidson looked too expensive for just an average guy, Jack thought to himself. Turning on his siren, he ordered the man to pull over to the curb. The man complied, calmly removing his helmet. "Papers, motorcyclist, now!" Jack demanded curtly, making no effort to hide his rudeness. When the man didn't respond immediately, Jack's irritation boiled over. He kicked the bike's side stand, causing it to crash to the ground with a loud clang. "I said move!" Jack barked, his aggression evident. By now, a crowd had started to gather. Onlookers began filming the scene with their phones. Someone shouted, "Why are you being so rough?" Jack snapped back, "Mind your own business." He turned his glare back to the motorcyclist. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" he added with a sneer. The man, unfazed, calmly pulled out his phone. "Calling a lawyer? Waste of time, pal," Jack taunted. At that moment, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez's voice came through the radio, announcing that he was on his way to the scene. Jack responded casually, "No issues here, just a violator." A few minutes later, Rodriguez arrived. The sergeant's face froze when he recognized the motorcyclist. "Jack, do you even realize what you're doing?" Rodriguez asked sternly. Jack shrugged, clearly not understanding the significance of the question. Ignoring Jack, Rodriguez turned to the man. "Good afternoon, Chief Brown. Apologies for the delay." Jack froze. "Chief?" The man smiled faintly. "Please, continue, officer. I'd love to see how you handle detentions." The crowd buzzed with whispers, and the tension was palpable. For the first time, Jack realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Jack, still stunned, watched as the man called Chief calmly lifted his motorcycle back up. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice rang out. "That's the new police chief!" Jack noticed more and more people filming the scene on their phones. "Chief, this has to be some kind of joke," Jack muttered, struggling to justify his earlier behavior. But Sergeant Rodriguez, standing next to the man, confirmed it. "This is Marcus Brown, our new chief. He just took office." Marcus shot a cold, piercing glance at Jack, as if studying every detail. "Officer Stevens," he began calmly, though his voice carried a sharp edge. "Do you believe that maintaining public order involves knocking over someone's vehicle and humiliating them?" Jack panicked. I was just doing my job," he stammered. Marcus cut him off. "Trying to show your authority, were you? Well, let's just say I'll now be taking a personal interest in your work. I'm sure your reports from the past few months will make for very enlightening reading." The crowd buzzed with excitement, and someone yelled, "Now that's a twist!" A bystander standing closer shouted loudly, "People like him should have been punished ages ago." Jack glanced nervously around, searching for support, but even his partner avoided his eyes, as if distancing himself from the scene. "Chief, I didn't know it was you," Jack tried to explain. Marcus leaned in slightly and said quietly but firmly, "Then who did you think you were dealing with? Someone less deserving of respect?" Sensing the situation escalating, Rodriguez stepped in. "All right, everyone, move along. Let us handle this." But before the crowd began to disperse, Marcus turned to them and said in a commanding voice, "Remember this moment. Every person deserves respect, regardless of their status. That applies to police officers as well." With that, Marcus mounted his motorcycle, started it, and drove away, leaving Jack standing frozen in the middle of the crowd, cold sweat dripping down his face. The smiles on the faces of the bystanders and their raised phones served as a stark reminder. This moment would live on the internet forever. The next day, the atmosphere at the station was thick with tension. The video of Jack and Marcus's confrontation had gone viral, and there was only one question on everyone's lips. What's going to happen to Jack Stevens? As he walked to the chief's office, muttering curses under his breath, his humiliation was palpable. Colleagues shot him disapproving glances, and some whispered behind his back. When Jack entered Marcus's office, the new chief was seated at his desk, flipping through documents. "Sit," Marcus said curtly without looking up. The silence in the room was almost tangible. Finally, Marcus raised his eyes. "Do you realize that you've jeopardized not just your reputation, but the trust people have in this entire precinct?" "Chief, it was a mistake," Jack began, but Marcus cut him off. "A mistake? You deliberately humiliated a person. If it had been anyone else, the outcome could have been far worse." Marcus stood, his voice now cold and resolute. "Your actions represent the very culture I intend to eliminate, a culture of brute force replacing respect and the rule of law. You are hereby temporarily suspended while I review your service record. And that's just the beginning." Jack tried to protest. "But Chief, you have to understand. It looked different in the moment. I was just—" "Enough with the excuses," Marcus snapped. "Your actions were recorded. This wasn't a matter of how it looked. It's what you did." When Jack left the office, the entire station already knew he'd been suspended. Some colleagues smirked, quietly satisfied. "Serves him right," Jack overheard as he passed by. That evening, Marcus held a meeting for all staff. "Hillsborough deserves a police force the community can trust," he announced. "We will start with transparency and education." He laid out a plan for mandatory bias training and a new accountability system for every officer. "Your duty is to the law and the citizens, not your ego," Marcus concluded. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but crystal clear. Change was coming, whether they liked it or not. Sitting in the back row, Jack felt as though the ground was slipping out from under him. He realized his old ways no longer had a place in this new reality, and he faced an uncertain and challenging future. The community center was packed as residents gathered to hear about changes in their police force and vent their frustrations. On a screen, the viral video of Jack Stevens kicking the motorcycle and humiliating Marcus played, a stark symbol of police misconduct. Marcus opened the meeting. "I'm here to build a police force that serves every resident with honor and respect, and we start by discussing what must change." Applause erupted, but then Marcus added, "First, I'd like Officer Stevens to explain his actions." All eyes turned to Jack. Rising slowly, he faced the crowd, their expressions a mix of anger and anticipation. "I made a mistake," Jack began. "My behavior was unacceptable, and I let my bias and anger take control. I hurt not just the individual I targeted, but the entire profession." The crowd reacted with mixed emotions. Some shouted, "You're just sorry you got caught." Others remained quiet, assessing his sincerity. Marcus stood beside him. "Apologies are a start, but not enough," he said. "Officer Stevens will undergo bias training, work with the community, and meet those he's wronged. If he doesn't prove he can change, his role here will end." Jack's journey of redemption began with training and volunteer work, where he heard stories of people impacted by discrimination, including Mrs. Hendricks, who told him, "You didn't even see us as people." One day, a 14-year-old boy asked him, "Did you ever hurt people like me?" Jack admitted, "Yes, I was wrong." This moment became a turning point for him, inspiring him to change. Months later, Marcus evaluated Jack's progress. "What have you learned?" he asked. Jack replied, "I was part of the problem, but I can be part of the solution." Marcus nodded. "The work isn't over. Are you ready to continue?" "Yes, Chief," Jack said. Over time, Jack became the face of a program rebuilding trust between the police and community. Under Marcus's leadership, the Hillsborough precinct transformed, with officers focusing on service rather than authority. Jack's story of accountability inspired others, proving that change is possible when mistakes are acknowledged and addressed.